us to see, um, is there actually at all an acute flare-up of asthma, or is it something? Is there an acute asthma at all? There's nothing like an acute asthma. It's always chronic asthma. But we always are interested in acute part of chronic asthma, which sometimes we call as exacerbation, sometimes we call as acute attack of asthma. We have called it as severe acute asthma. If you remember, status asthmaticus was used. We have used acute episode of asthma. There are many terms. Do you all agree? The problem here is the word flare exacerbation is not suitable for clinical practice. That's simply because it is like many patients may not remember this exacerbation, and therefore it's not very much suitable for practice. And secondly, attack has a very varying meaning, and it's not actually, what should I say, it's not perceived properly because it never focuses on gradual worsening. An episode means many won't understand an episode, when the episode starts and when the episodes end. So all these terms have been used, but and therefore what I actually suggest is that these episodes terms should not be used, exacerbation should not be used, attack should not be used. There is a preferred term called flare-up. Why this term flare-up? Because this flare-up means there is a progressive increase in symptoms of breathlessness, cough and wheeze or chest tightness, and decrease in the lung function. That means there is a chronic disease that gets flared up. This is most accepted terminology for an acute asthma. So therefore, let's start using the term flare-up from now onwards. It can happen in a child with a pre-existing diagnosis of asthma, or it could be that this would be the first unfortunate episode for that child. What actually happens in a flare? There is a smooth muscle constriction, but beyond that, there is a intense edema superimposed on a chronic edema, edematous inflammation, and there is an outpouring of mucus, epithelial shedding, damage, everything that's happening. If you look at the histopathological cross section of near fatal or fatal asthma, of the patients who died from asthma, you will see that there is an intense, there is a goblet cell hyperplasia. Can you see? This is from an adult, but don't worry, this was a chronic asthmatic. There is a intense mucus here, and there is a smooth muscle hypertrophy, and there is a intense infiltration with leukocytes. What I wanted to tell you is that there is no doubt it is inflammation, and there is no doubt this is a flare-up of inflammation, and no doubt that the blockage is the main thing. The blockage can happen from the products of inflammation, not from the bronchospasm itself. Did you understand? It is basically the products, outpouring of inflammatory mediators, and the mucin and the thickening, acute thickening on chronic that happens, that leads to asthma. Now, can I ask you a question? Is it that somebody who goes on to have chronic asthma subsequently goes on and then end up with a death or mortality? No. In fact, if you look at the histopathological sections of those who died from asthma, there is a very characteristic presentation. These airways are actually anatomically, functionally and physiologically they are different from the airways of those asthmatics whom we see in day-to-day practice. That's why you have two sets of patients. One who keeps on suffering from asthma, they get wheeze, cough, they suffer. This is something like morbidity. You understand? They suffer, but they don't die. And there is a second category who frequently come to ICUs. I don't know if you remember. They come to ICU. After 1 or 2 months, again they will see them in the ICU. No matter. They take the treatment. They do everything. But they keep on coming to ICU. So they say if you come to ICU once or twice, it means that third time, fourth time you are going to come to ICU. That means their airway characteristics are different. Their airways are brittle. And they may or may not respond to bronchodilator. Am I just coming to the point? There is a subset of patients. So therefore, you should be very, very careful about them. And these are the patients who should be always and always on inhalation corticosteroids. And if you see them, they are brittle, they are frequent visitors to ICU, never take them off steroids because it is too risky and too dangerous. And therefore, this takes me to a question: what are the risk factors that make a child susceptible for acute asthma? These are the mild to moderate flare-ups that you see very commonly in practice. Most of these risk factors are modifiable. They have a seasonal flare-ups, they have some comorbidities, they have psychosocial problems, and therefore just they don't want to take treatment. And they keep on coming in flare-ups. Did you understand? There's a poor adherence. There's an uncontrolled symptoms. There is a definite exposure to trigger and irritant in them, and these all can be modified. It can be tackled by you. Very, very important. But there is something called non-modifiable risk factor. This is exactly what I was addressing to you, that if a patient is ever intubated or has been admitted to PICU in the past or has more than one severe flare-up requiring hospitalization in the past 12 months, he is going to have some kind of non-modifiable risk factor, and he will be your frequent ICU visitor. Am I clear on these two categories of patients? Because this is very, very important, and recognize them. And therefore, I would say in those with non-modifiable risk factors, you can escalate the treatment faster. In majority of those with modifiable risk factors, you give them a bronchodilator, little bit of oxygen and a steroid, they will become alright. Even you can manage them at home or even in ICU, just in the ER or ward you can go. But these are the non-modifiable children are the ones who are brittle, who get into ICUs. I will just take you through this physiology. This is very, very important for you to understand before you would focus your treatment. There are children who have fixed airflow obstruction. And there are children who have variable airflow obstruction. What are the children who have fixed airflow obstruction? Those children who are born small, have smaller airways. Tiny babies, tiny airways, low birth weights, prematures, etc. Secondly, those of them who tend to become obese in childhood, they will not have variable, they may even have fixed airflow obstruction. Am I clear? Watch these children. Please beware when you are reducing controller medications in asthma. They are at higher risk factor for flare-ups. They are the future candidates for airway remodeling. That means from a reversible airflow obstruction, they may tend to get fixed airflow obstruction. So you will sometimes in spirometry will read reversible plus fixed obstructions, isn't it? Restrictive plus obstructive disease. What about those who have variable airflow obstruction? These are the patients whom frequently you see in office practice. Frequently they don't use controllers, but they start using salbutamol more. They don't use the red one, they use the blue one, inhalers, isn't it? Those of them, sometimes they would have been hospitalized, unfortunately, in the past, but they are not frequent visitors. The main problem would be compliance and adherence to the therapy. Here, these are the ones who can be well controlled, and emphasize on these children are good control. Very, very important for you. Now, what I am going to talk to you today is only three things. How do you diagnose flare-ups? How do you assess the severity of the flare-up and therefore you can triage the treatment? And lastly, how do you treat them? Now, diagnosis. First of all, when they come to emergency room, please check this issue. Flare-up. Is this an asthma at all? This is very, very important. There should be history of variable symptoms. You should take a quick history. You don't have you don't have that much of time as it is in the casual, chronic office practice, etc., isn't it? So therefore, what are the quick questions that I have asked in practice? Are you already on nebulizer? Many of them they do use. That's a bitter fact, but they should not be, but they will be using. Do you correct? So if they frequently, so that means quickly you know that it's probably asthma. Because some doctor said so. It's a known case of asthma. Look at the old records. Please check if it's COVID. Two couple of points about COVID. One, in COVID you don't get triggered symptoms. COVID is not triggered. COVID is an evolved disease. It is not a triggered disease. Triggered means within minutes of exposure to a dust, cold, viruses, you will have bronchospasm or you will have breathlessness, etc. COVID evolves. The episodes of COVID are febrile. In children, of course, there can be asymptomatic, symptomatic, so many presentations are there. But remember, the breathlessness in COVID is not reversible. They're happy. I would say asthmatics are happy wheezers and COVIDs are unhappy wheezers. They are sick. Asthmatics are generally, they don't look sick. This is a small point. And remember, if you have COVID and if you give bronchodilator, they do not respond. They don't respond because in both cases you will end up giving steroids. So therefore, please be careful. And you will have some questions. I think I will have stormy questions to test or not to test. In times of this complicated scenario, you test. If there is a family member affected with COVID, then you are on the card. So I think you should not get confused with the COVID and acute flare-up of asthma. Remember, once in a while you get these, but you should be aware. Is there a choking, foreign body, aspiration, or is there any vomitous aspiration? Please look at the age of the child. It's very, very important. See, in a younger the child, unlikely to be a flare-up of asthma, it could be some mimics. Is it a first episode or recurrent episode? Recurrent episodes means yes, it's a flare-up. But first episode, be careful about differential diagnosis. Please rule out infections. It is very, very easy for you to rule out infections. Bronchiolitis, pneumonia, lower respiratory tract infections are to rule out. Let me take you through a case. Okay, with permission of you, let me take the name of the patient as Nadir. Nadir sir. Okay, Nadir comes. Nadir is a 6-month-old baby who comes to your clinic, and the mother tells this story. At 7 o'clock he had colds. At 7:30 he has wheeze, breathlessness. You take to the casualty, nebulize him, and he's fine. And mother says, "No sir, nothing is required. I'm fine. I will go home." This is asthma. And the mother of Nadir says, "Sir, on Monday he had cold. Tuesday I gave some syrups. But by Tuesday evening he started becoming breathless. Fever is very mild. This is bronchiolitis." Did you understand? There is an evolution of upper respiratory symptoms to lower respiratory symptoms. That is bronchiolitis. There is a continuation of upper respiratory symptoms to lower respiratory infection. That is lower respiratory tract infection. Bronchiolitis less than 2, lower respiratory tract infection in older. Am I clear? Suppose they say, sir, upper respiratory tract infection started, but he started sneezing, then he started wheezing. So from sneeze to wheeze, there is less gap. That is triggered. Suppose he says, sir, he had cold, then he had cough, then he had fever, then he had tachypnea, etc., etc. That is pneumonia. The fever is the dominant symptom, not the breathlessness. Breathlessness comes last in pneumonia. In viral infections, breathlessness comes early. In bacterial infections, breathlessness comes last. Bacterial infections are localized. And therefore, initially they have fever, cough, fast breathing, etc. Lastly, they will have difficulty in breathing. Did you understand? In viral infections, it is edema of the airways, and therefore they will have breathing difficulties to start with, be it bronchiolitis or viral triggered inflammation of asthma also. But in asthma, there will be past episodes. First episode is sometimes difficult, but in bronchiolitis, it is the first episode. Atypical presentations, you should be very, very careful. Assessment is most important. It's not about a wheezy child, whether it is asthma or bronchiolitis. Hardly what will you do? You give oxygen and bronchodilator, isn't it? The first step one is same. So let's not worry too much into dissecting which one it is, but it is essentially scoring, grading, and triaging. Whether should I manage this in home and should I ask them to come to emergency room, or from emergency room should I then shift them to ward, ICU, or refer, or wash off my hands? This is very, very important in acute asthma, and let me tell you how to do this. Like in all cases, there is mild, moderate, severe, and life-threatening. And I don't have to tell you life-threatening. Life-threatening means it will threaten your life and a child's life. The moment you see that child, your life is also, your heart is almost in your mouth. Drowsy, confused, silent chest, not able to breathe, not able to speak, sinus. Did you understand? Urgently treat and transfer. Don't shunt. Shunting means, from turn the ambulance U-turn. No, that's not the way. You must at least give oxygen. Do something. If you don't have anything, take a syringe for adrenaline in your casualty. Give subcutaneous, intramuscular, doesn't matter. Don't calculate the dose even. Give and send. Am I clear on this? Please save them. These are the children who need to be immediately ventilated, or airways has to be established. Very difficult for you. Even in those experienced intensive care units, it is difficult for them to even ventilate. Did you understand? So therefore, I am just talking of life-threatening first, but let me take you do not worry, because in majority of the cases in your life, you get mild to moderate cases. Severe ones are very, very infrequent. So patients will be sitting, he will be talking, sometimes minimal or not nil accessory muscles. He is not agitated. That means the respiratory system is affected, child is not affected. That means it is mild. Am I clear? So heart rates plus minus, oxygen saturations are normal. So the system is affected. There is a bronchospasm edema in the system, but rest of the child is normal. Suppose the child starts, decompensation happens, then it is moderate and severe. The child starts working. What are the things beyond respiratory system? There is tachycardia. There is an attempt, respiratory rate. It starts breathing fast to compensate. Accessory muscles comes into action. Diaphragms can come into action. So there is a progressive increase in fast breathing and difficult breathing, and saturation started. So there is a decompensation, isn't it? There is hypoxia setting in. Remember, asthma is not a disease of hypoxia. It's a disease of hypocapnia. That means there is a CO2 washout. It's a disease of fast breathing. There is no hypoxia because the parenchyma is normal. You will breathe fast. See, if you breathe fast, will you become hypoxic? No. So therefore, hypoxia is last to set in asthma. First CO2 washout and then O2 decline. Remember this. So therefore, you should be very, very careful when you start getting low saturation. So therefore, you should be worried about saturations in asthma. Please, even if the saturation is normal, let's say 95, and a child is asthmatic and using accessory muscles, I'm taking it to you. Tell me, is it mild or severe? It is severe. If pulse ox is normal, and if the child is having accessory muscles working, intercostals working, subcostal working, child is breathing, is hungry for breath, that means the child is exhausted. Remember, even if the ox is normal, I would consider it as severe. Please remember this point. This is very, very important practical tip for you, because asthma is a disease of obstruction, and therefore it is not a disease of restriction or parenchymal disease, and if hypoxia is lost to set in. And secondly, it is not the value of pulse ox that you should look for in hypoxia, the trend. Let's say the child who is asthmatic was 99, now he is 98, and then he is 97 and 96, and now he is 95. What does that mean? He is deteriorating. Please understand. So for you 95, sir, it's above 94 definition. No. So don't tell me like that. It is a trend in the pulse oximetry, not just one value. That's very, very important for you to take into consideration. Did you understand? So once the asthma crosses the respiratory system, involves CVS like tachycardia, it goes to central nervous system like drowsiness, irritability, child is agitated, throws away the mask, you are not able to give oxygen. Did you understand? If there is a resistance from the mother, child, difficulty, shouting, fighting, and you are trying your best to put an IV line, you understand? That means that you are definitely facing a severe flare-up. I am just trying to tell you these points because I have always read scoring system. Pulmonary score gradings are 1 to 5. It is nice to write an answer in an exam. But when you are in front of a patient in an emergency room, none of the scoring comes to your mind. I don't know, at least to me it was very, very difficult. Now score 1, score 2. How many of us have done Apgar scoring, or you say scoring in the newborn resuscitation room? The moment the baby is delivered, Appa, it cried, I'm happy. I think what I wanted to tell you is that assess the child. Do not worry about the scores. You can overdiagnose, and it's very easy after you give oxygen and salbutamol. So these are the signs, red flag signs, very, very important. And moment these signs are there, remember you have to establish airway, not bronchodilation. If the child is hardly having any air entering into the chest, what your bronchodilator will go do? It doesn't do anything. Nor there are no smooth muscles in the neck for it to help. Now, I have scared you with so many things, but that's not what happens in day-to-day practice. Remember, you don't worry so much because, at the end of the day, you end up with simple cases. More than 90% of the cases, they are simple. Either you manage them at home or a hospital that looks like home. You give salbutamol. You have to give 4 to 5 actuations through MDI with spacer, one actuation at a time, preferably after a gap of a minute between the 2 actuations. 4 actuations means don't do 1, 2, 3, 4 and take. You have to do 1, breathe for 30 seconds, give a gap of 30 seconds again and take another. You understand? So if you take 6 actuations, you will be spending 6 minutes. Not back to back. The child has to take. It is exhausted. Give a gap, small gap of say 15 seconds, 20 seconds. It's like drinking water. You can't drink water tuck, 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 tuck. You have to take sip, next sip, next sip. So similarly, you have to give one after another actuations through MDI with spacer, with or without mask, depending on the age of the child. You can also give nebulization. You remember that one nebule is equal to 6 puffs. And one nebule is equal to 12 puffs. 6 puffs in children below 6 years and is almost equal to 12 puffs, double that in older children. I am just giving a thumb rule. Don't ask me, sir, give me evidence. This is just a thumb rule. One nebule is equal to 6 puffs. Therefore, we say take 3 nebulizations in 1 hour. No. So, therefore, 6 actuations at the interval of 20 minutes. At home in the first 1 hour. Did you understand? So you manage the first hour in the house or in the hospital, doesn't matter, but that is the initial treatment. Rather than calling it as home management, hospital management, that is the first management. You give salbutamol. You give 6 plus 6 plus 6 puffs or 1 nebule plus 1 nebule plus 1 nebule in first 1 hour, giving child to breathe in between, allowing the bronchus to work, dilate. Even drugs needs to work, one after another. The next one would be a better inhalation because the first one would have dilated few of the bronchus, the next generation of the bronchus and the next generation of the bronchus. Sequentially it goes on producing bronchodilation. Remember, asthma is a disease of variable airflow obstruction. So not all the airways would receive your bronchodilation. That is why you give repeatedly. Why we give repeatedly, why we give back-to-back nebulizations or inhalations is only because you have to dilate the airways one after the another so that all the airways would get dilated. And if there is no response, you must start the first dose of oral steroids. And that's very, very important. Do not hesitate because steroids take 4 to 6 hours to work. And till the steroids work, you have to keep on pumping SABA, bronchodilators. You must always send a patient with written action plan. Ask the patient, do you have written action plan and did you follow? This slide looks very cumbersome to me also. But let me make it very simple for you. Please understand. All that you are writing here is like a diary. You have your identity card, you write your name, Dr. Subramanya, O positive blood group. In case of emergency, I am not diabetic, I am not hypertensive. If you are found on the road, it's very easy for you, easy for someone to take care of you. So similarly, you should have an action plan where you write name, age, sex, your symptoms, whether you are well controlled, poorly controlled or uncontrolled or partially controlled, whatever. You please write poor compliant patient, whatever. Just make a diagnosis. That will help the person in the emergency room and regular treatment what you are receiving. Are you on 100 BD or 200 BD? Or are you on LABA plus ICS? So you just mention that. That's very, very important. Next is watch out. This is what you tell the mother. Watch out. What? Increasing cough, breathlessness, night awakening, activity. So if these symptoms are there, start one actuation. Then same home management which I have told you. They should do it. In case of emergency, please give that emergency plan for them and also give the dose of prednisolone that they have to take. You please write that their child has to take 20 milligram, 30 milligram, 1 to 2 milligram per kg. Child should take and come. Please write that. Even you tell them take steroid. How do they know? The mother should be told 2 tablets, 1 tablet, whatever you prescribe. That should be shown to them and there should be an emergency purse and a small slip. or this message should be there in their WhatsApp, so that they will quickly treat. This is most important for me. Now let's say the home management is done and they have come to emergency room. That means the child is more sicker, or even milder ones can also come to emergency room. It's not that they should take the treatment at home. So mild to moderates, they come to emergency room. You give same treatment. There is no much difference, except that now here start oxygen therapy and target saturation is 94 to 95%. The target saturation is not 92, my dear friends. It should be higher, because hypoxia is the killer in asthma, but hypoxia is not the initial sign in asthma. Therefore, be careful. Continue SABA. Assess after 1 hour. If the things are fine, then please start talking about long-term management. Majority of the patients, I will tell you, they don't take treatment, and that's why they are in emergency room. Otherwise, they won't come to emergency. A good patient should come to only office, because they are not compliant, and therefore they will come to emergency room. Start talking about, sir, you should have taken the treatment. No, all these things can be, because the parents and the child are most receptive in the casualty or emergency room. So therefore, start talking about long-term management. Moderate to severe, so the child does not improve, and you shift them to the ward. Ward means where the oxygen is available, where nursing care is available, not the casualty where everybody comes and goes. So therefore, here you must always remember, if a child doesn't respond to initial therapy, he may not respond to subsequent therapies. See, if airways are nice, if airways are susceptible to bronchodilation, they will respond to first 3 or 4 puffs. Beautifully they respond. The moment they don't respond, the failure starts repeating. Did you understand? Even in the ward, they may not respond. You may have to intensify. You may have to escalate fast. So if they respond, they go well. If they don't respond, they will do bad. Remember this point. That's why you must give systemic corticosteroids. This is not the time to give inhalation corticosteroids. And I'll come to some debates little later. But escalate if worsening, you may have to give IV magnesium sulfate, aminophylline or terbinafine infusion, or intermittently you can give terbinafine subcutaneous also, which I am coming to that. SABA. Whether should I give salbutamol or formoterol? You can give any of them. Salbutamol is the most preferred. Formoterol can be given if already they have a puff. Already on, let's say, for a cart 100. You can give additional puffs at home or even in the emergency room. Same thing which they have brought. You don't have to rush to a respiratory solution. Give the same. It's simple. It is just, after all, formoterol with budesonide. You can give that. Totally you can repeat 6 puffs. I am talking of somebody who is on let's say Foracort 100 BD and he has come to casualty. You can give 6 puffs of the same inhaler which they are using at home. I am not talking of something else in the casualty or emergency room. Did you understand? So you can give the same up to 6 puffs you can repeat. So that's important. Salbutamol, that the minimum dose should be 2.5 mg. Upper limit is till you get heart rate increase, go on giving. Don't worry about it. Give back to back, because not all the airways would receive salbutamol. It depends on the severity. Mild ones, they respond to a couple of doses, but you may have to give frequent doses. How much? You can go on giving till you get hypokalemia or toxicity. I'm sorry for these words, but what I meant was, don't worry, it's a pretty safe drug. Some are worried about tachycardia. Let me tell you, as these children improve with hypoxia, their oxygen levels improve. Actually, tachycardia comes down. Tachycardia is also because of hypoxia, not necessarily because of salbutamol. Once you dilate the bronchus, they are very happy and they will, actually they relax also. There is an apprehension. Emotional factors also play in asthma. So therefore, my dear friends, do not worry so much about tachycardia. It's a pretty safe drug. Suppose you are in a resource poor country, you are in train or you are in flight, when somebody gets a bronchus, even oral would do. Please give something. Don't say no. Let me take you through which device to give. Is MDI spacer or a nebulizer? No nebulizer without oxygen. If you are using nebulizer, it means that the child should be severe enough to start oxygen. Then use a nebulizer. Otherwise, you can use an MDI spacer with or without mask, with or without mouthpiece. So that's fine, fair enough. Use a mouthpiece instead of mask. Mask, you will have a lot of wastage. Fitting mask is difficult. Mouthpiece is preferable. No, that is preferable. There were doubts about should I use a DPI in acute flare up or not. GINA has permitted. Do not worry, you can even use DPI, but DPI is not recommended. Did you understand? But if DPI with salbutamol Respule, salbutamol Rotacap is all that you have in the house, you can use. Don't say you should not use DPI. No, you can use. The problem is that you do something but relieve their bronchospasm. But don't trust the delivery, because in acute flare up they are not able to generate good inspiration flow. DPI requires what? It requires 15 liters per minute of inspiratory force, which they may not generate. Mild flare up they can generate. Moderate and severe flare ups they can't generate the flow. So therefore DPI can be discouraged, but if that is the only option, start and come. There has been overuse of SABA. Do you all agree? Most of our patients want SABA only. They don't want ICS, inhalation corticosteroid. What is the problem? Actually down regulates the receptors. What I meant by down regulates the receptors, if you are frequently using SABA, there is down growth of steroid receptors. And what to add to the to add to the problems, what happens is there will be saturation of SABA receptors, beta 2 receptors. When they come in casualty, again you pump beta 2. It's not enough if you give beta 2. There should be beta 2 receptors for them. Please understand, frequent users of SABA, they get into a hell lot of problems. Please tell them, if you use steroids, then only there is regeneration of more and more beta 2 receptors, and that will help. That's the message that you have to give. What about ipratropium? Ipratropium is cousin brother of salbutamol. So ipratropium, isolated ipratropium doesn't work. It always work on the background of salbutamol. Excellent synergy is there. That's why many of you must have prescribed Duolin Respules. Did you understand? But a small caution here. Ipratropium when you should use not 6th hourly. That's wrong. You should use 3 in the first 1 hour. This is the change. Remember, 3 ipratropium nebules in the first 1 hour, and then every 6th hour. Am I clear? So that means even you will load ipratropium also. You don't slowly give ipratropium. You will load ipratropium and then continuously every 6th hourly, and then for 1 or 2 days or 2 or 3 days. That's fine. Steroids, which one? All steroids have same mechanism of action. It is only pharmacokinetics, dynamics, route of administration, dosages, cost that differ. So do not worry, all are safe. They act on the same way. And why steroids? It's an acute on chronic inflammation, and inflammation is uncontrolled, and therefore you have problem, and therefore you must give steroids. Steroid is the only drug that saves life. Steroid is the only drug that controls the flare up, and therefore you must use them. Do not worry about. You must use a systemic one. Oral versus IV both are same, equally acting, and I'll come to some of the controversies of inhalation versus oral versus IV little later on, but you can use any of them, and that's important. Dexamethasone is, if you want to give some CET ranking between dexamethasone, prednisolone is very popular, but dexamethasone pharmacodynamics scores very well. It is 5 to 6 times more potent, has a longer 4 to 5 times longer half-life than prednisolone. It has similar efficacy but lesser side effects compared to other steroids. 1 to 2 days of dexamethasone is equal to 5 days of prednisolone. Remember, I'm just giving an equivalent, more palatable, lesser GI side effects. Shorter course can lead to cost savings and compliance. I'm just giving you a comparison of steroids in acute flare-up of asthma. You can have a systemic steroid. It can be given parenterally, but the disadvantage of parenteral is it can be cumbersome, time consuming, painful. You have to establish an IV line. Did you understand? Oral steroid on the other hand is convenient, but the problem is can be refused by children and they may vomit. No syrup prednisolone. Please remember, you must give tablet prednisolone because the preparations are not that excellent, and there will be spillage, vomiting, the quality, shaking, all the problems will be there. Best is to give tablets, remember. And when you go for inhaled, PMDI versus nebulizer, nebulizer needs continuous monitoring. PMDI, the problem is if he is a first time user, then he doesn't know how to use. So don't rely on that. Then you go for nebulizer. Am I clear? You have to relieve here, but educate them when you are using. If you use a nebulizer and at home you tell them to take MDI, they will tell, sir, you when it is more you use nebulizer and make money, but for us at home you make us bakras and ask us to use MDI with spacer. Did you understand? Please explain them why you are using a nebulizer, because the child is passive. At home the child is active and therefore can use MDI, which is better in terms of drug delivery and reach out. Did you understand? So always explain them the advantages of steroids. There is an excellent review in Cochrane database. If those of you are interested can get access to I will send you or share with you a little later the meta-analysis. Can you use inhalation corticosteroids in acute flare-up? You can, but the problem is this is not a substitute for systemic steroids. Somebody asked me, can I use ICS as well as systemic? The answer is yes, but when you use systemic, why I mean inhalation? You understand my point? Systemic anyway reaches out. Which device is better? Both are equally comparable. PMDI with spacer and nebulizer in mild flare-ups. Both are equal. So therefore MDI spacer can be preferred. Now in severe flare-ups, no PMDI, you must use nebulizer. I will just give you an overview of the drugs used. Salbutamol minimum 2.5 milligrams. You can use 0.15 milligram per kg per dose. Please don't by heart the dose, go on giving salbutamol. Ipratropium 250 micrograms nebulized. Remember 3 in the first shot followed by every 6th hourly. Methyl prednisolone is 1 to 2 milligram per kilo 6th hourly. Magsulf. Don't get scared with Magsulf. People are worried about it. Sir, it causes hypotension. No problem. Don't worry, because this is a very good drug. 25 to 50 milligram per kilo slow infusion over 30 minutes has to be given. Terbutaline is not available in Bangalore to me. I don't know if it is available to you. You can use bolus or an infusion. And albuterol is available abroad, but not in India. To the best of my knowledge, I think in future it will become available the moment we start using. We are not using albuterol drips. Aminophylline is time tested drug because it's available everywhere, although some of them have a problem of safety margin in terms of the therapeutic dose and the toxic dose. Still a good drug. It has been in and out of the protocol many a times. Whether to use which one first, you can use Magsulf first and then aminophylline. But if you are scared of using Magsulf, you can use aminophylline. But you are not scared of using aminophylline, but I will tell you should be really scared of using aminophylline, but not magnesium sulfate in terms of toxicity. This is the most important drug, and I don't think in COVID times you are all masters of using oxygen judiciously, appropriately and rationally. But no oxygen with 1 to 2 liters per minute slow drip and all. No. Big no to all of these. You must use good amount of oxygen, not less than 7 to 8 liters per minute, preferably 10 liters per minute, because you have to drive the oxygen. Lot of it goes to the dead space and proximal airway. So therefore, my dear friends, please use good amount of oxygen. If you use less than 6 liters per minute for a nebulizer, it will not generate the force for the nebulization. Did you understand? You connect the oxygen to nebulizer, correct? It will not generate that flow or pressure that is required for nebulization. So please always use 6, 8, 9, 10 liters per minute, not 3, 4, 2 liters per minute. Investigations are generally not required to prove an asthma, but in an admitted case in ICU and all, you may have to do CBC, serum potassium, or you can see the ECG itself on the monitor and then make a diagnosis of hypokalemia if at all and correct it, and an X-ray chest to see if there is a foreign body, localized V's and pneumonia, etc., which can be sometimes missed, so therefore you can take a chest X-ray. If there is an improvement, assess for discharge. If the symptoms improve, it doesn't require SABA, saturations are fantastic. More than that, the child is happy and fine, sipping tea, talks to you, uncle thank you, all these things are very, very important. And arrange for discharge. When you arrange, please continue the reliever for some more time. For 1 or 2 weeks, the airway is still brittle, and don't try to stop SABA and send. SABA is a very good drug. Please remember, they should not continue for longer. They have to come for follow-up. Start the controller. Start. If it's already on a controller, let's say 100 BD, budesonide, then you step it up. Because even you may not step it up for long. For 2 or 4 weeks, based on the severity, you must give, if it's 100, you give 200 BD. If it's 200, give 400 BD. Am I clear? For next 2 or 4 weeks. This is very, very important for you because that is going to reduce the inflammation, take off. This will be like handing over the charge from systemic steroids to inhalation corticosteroids. How long to continue prednisolone? If it is a mild flare-up, 3 days. Moderate, 5 days. Severe flare-up, 7 days and beyond. An ICU ventilated child, I would give 2 weeks of prednisolone. Did you understand my point? So, if you give beyond 7 days, you must taper. Otherwise, generally up to 7 to 10 days, you need not taper much and don't worry too much about tapering and all. So, understand that you have to give these steroids well and plan properly. In follow-up, you must call them after 1 week. Reliever should be used. Controller higher dose than what it has been. I think I explained to you for 1 or 2 weeks. If it is a mild flare-up, or if it is a severe flare-up, longer duration of higher dose. You control the inflammation and then again bring it down to the lower level of steroids. Step down. Risk factors, you have to look at the risk factors, check the technique, adherence. These are very, very important. I think invariably you will find 3 or 4 factors, not one. When they do mistake, they do in multiple. And action plan. You have given an action plan. Have they understood? Are they reading and following it up? These are very, very important. And always in flare-up, trigger avoidance. There will be something that has happened. Either some smoke, cigarette, crackers, an aroma, or an infection, or they are exposed to a vehicle dust, some pets, cockroaches, etc., etc. Please address them. If worsening in the ward, then you must shift to acute facility. I will discuss 2 lines about ventilator because generally this is not discussed in most of the time. They say, okay, ventilation is a nightmare, don't do. In PICU, you must use ketamine. That is the most preferred. Give a loaded dose followed by an infusion. Please maintain airway, breathing and circulation. And here, you do an ABG and there are 3 stages in the ABG. Initial stage is PaCO2 is low. That is because the child is hyperventilating. Did you understand? And PaO2 is normal. This is stage 1. And now stage 2 is there is a fatigue and therefore there is a CO2 accumulation. This is not a good sign. And oxygen saturations are falling. Stage 3 is when there is an acidosis also. Am I clear? Stage 3 you must ventilate. Stage 2 you may have to consider ventilation. Stage 1 may not require ventilation. So therefore remember these points. Therefore I am telling you. So which ventilation is a nightmare? The best is to use NIVs. This depends on the choice of the intensivist. Some are good in HFNC, some are good in BiPAP. They have their own debates. Debates apart. You can give any one of them whichever comfortable, but you should know what you are doing. Intubation indications are, all the red flag signs are indications. And if you go by ABG, stage 2 and stage 3 are indications for ventilation. Am I clear? Hypercapnia plus or minus acidosis is an indication for ventilation. Hydrate the child, give a bolus of NS, pre-oxygenate, mid-as, induced by ketamine. You should use rapid sequence intubation protocol. You must use muscle relaxant in an older child. Otherwise, younger ones you need not. The settings of ventilator are very, very important. This is the difference between a normal ventilation and an asthmatic ventilation. Here, it's a trigger, paralyze, synchronize, pressure control, long expiratory time and a low rate. But normally you keep an IE of 1:2 and physiological rate, but here low rate, long E time. This is important for ventilation. So you must keep lower PEEP because there is an auto PEEP that happens because of air trapping, and FiO2 maintain sufficient enough to maintain SpO2 of more than 95%. This is just an X-ray of one of the worst admitted severe asthmatic. Look at the air trapping. Can you see? So much of air trapping, flattened diaphragms, emphysematous chest, thin cardia. So this is a real difficult situation. I think you can imagine the child with silent chest, and this is very important for you, very difficult to treat them. There are controversies which you are going to ask me questions. Remember the controversies on salbutamol, salmeterol, formoterol, which steroid, aminophylline, whether to hospitalize, when to discharge, when to intubate. There are controversies, but I will tell you, my dear friends, if you are a good clinician, treat the child, not the airways. Treat the child, not the airways. There will be no controversies. Most important, you should prevent it. No child should come in acute flare-ups. Therefore, focus on long-term management of asthma. Triggers are the ones which cause flare-ups. So, focus on triggers. You should have a written action plan. None of us give this. Please make a habit of writing it down so they know what they are doing. Even it helps you when they come to emergency room. Suppose intern, postgraduate sees that written plan. At least if they execute that, we are done. So, my last line for you. Treat the child, not the disease or the airways. From all of us. And thank you very much, and you can give your feedbacks to my mobile number, and there will be questions, and I'm happy to take up the questions.
Shimmy, are you there? Shimmy, Dr. Shimmy?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah, carry on.
Thank you, Subramanian, for such an elaborate presentation. It was very clear. We have few questions in the chat box. We will go for the questions.
Yeah.
Can we mix Livolin and budesonide in nebulizer?
See, in a nebulizer, don't mix Livolin and budesonide. Let me tell you why. Livolin as a molecule has different aerosol characteristics. When it comes out of a nebulizer, I am talking of a jet nebulizer. Okay, what happens is there is going to be dissimilar molecules that come. It's a jet. When you play a jet, what happens? You get bigger molecule, medium size molecule, smaller molecule, smallest, etc. You understand? So there will be varying degrees of sizes that you get, right? But the studies have shown that the size of the aerosol in a steroid and the sizes of the aerosol in a bronchodilator, they are not same. Am I clear? They are not same. Therefore, give separately. I would say, why you want to mix? First give salbutamol, dilate the airways, and then give steroid. The steroid will reach. What is the use of steroid before salbutamol or with the salbutamol? Anyway, inhalation steroid is not going to work immediately. And remember, the dose of steroid that is used in inhalation therapy in acute asthma is 1600, 1800 milligrams, not micrograms, not your small respule. No, they don't help. You have to use high doses of steroids if at all you want to get into airways. In acute flare-up I am talking. So therefore, my dear friends, always use salbutamol and then steroid. If at all you want to use a steroid inhalation, and use high doses of steroids. And the studies have also shown that if you use budesonide only, and if you see the aerosols coming out of budesonide nebulization, and if you take all the aerosols on a peripheral smear, and if I were to use the word, there will be anisopoikilocytosis. Am I clear? Of budesonide aerosols. That means majority of them may get into proximal airways than distal airways. So be careful and don't rely on that. Nimi can go to next question.
So, the question was from Dr. Amit. One more question is there. Do we need to use normal saline also in the nebulization chamber if the volume of medicine itself is 5 ml?
Can you use small?
Do we need to use normal saline also in nebulization chamber if the volume of medicine itself is 5 ml?
Yeah. I will tell you. If you use 2 ml, you will get larger particles. If you use 3 ml, you will get smaller particles. If you use 4 to 5 ml, you will get much smaller particles. Am I clear? Are you understanding the point? So that's what I meant was, until unless you have sufficient volume, from where the jet will come. So if you have good clouds, you will get a good rain. If you have small clouds, your rain will come, but rain will not be uniformly distributed on the land. And again, if you fill 4 ml or in the nebulizing chamber, within duration of 5 to 10 minutes, 50% of the volume gets nebulized. What I meant was, if you put 2 ml, in 5 minutes 1 ml gets nebulized. If you put 5 ml, 2.5 ml gets nebulized in first 5 minutes. You want to give 1 ml in first 5 minutes or 2.5 ml in first 5 minutes? If you want to give 2.5 ml in the first 1 minute, then you should fill the volume. Am I clear? So don't use a smaller volume. Suppose you have 1 respule, you can add 1 ml of saline to it and then make it 3 ml. Suppose 2.5 ml respule comes. You can even make it 3.5 and give. It's better. I had one pediatrician who suggested me, Subbu, this is better. You add 2 respules to a chamber. That makes it 5 ml. That's also another way of delivering more salbutamol. It all depends on how much you want to salbutamize the child. If you want to salbutamize the child more, then be prepared from beginning. Next one.
Yeah. Do we have to shake the MDA canister before each pump?
You must shake. And let me tell you why you should shake. The canister contains the drug, the propellant, and some material like surfactant, mixer, the one which does the masala. Mix the propellant with the drug. 90% of the canister contains propellant, 5 to 10% drug, 2 to 3% mixer, surfactant like material. Am I clear? It's like pani puri that you make, masal puri. You understand the point. So unless you shake it, the propellant will not get mixed with the drug properly, and the surfactant like material will not miss it properly. Good aerosol is generated when you shake it. So you must shake it. That's very, very important.
Thank you, sir. So next question is, can we repeat magnesium sulfate and amino?
Yes, you can repeat.
And shall
There
we
is a ceiling limit for both the drugs. Please refer to the protocols, or I will WhatsApp to you. Above 1 gram you should be careful in Maxelf.
Shall we dilute aspartate respules, which is available in market with normal saline?
Why dilute? Use 2 of them. You can dilute if you are using only 1 respule, but a patient should not be coming for 1 respule. In the emergency room, or when they have come to you, it means that the home management of 3 or 4 has failed. Correct? No? So here the question of salbutamizing the child comes, and therefore I would say theoretically you have to use more.
Can we use ketamine drip?
Can we?
Use ketamine drip.
Sorry, but I am not an intensivist. Therefore, I will leave it to anybody from intensive care can answer that question. My experience, I visit them, tell them, ask the intensivist, have you slept well, and come out of the intensive care unit. But I will tell them that use ketamine. Ketamine is very airway friendly. That doesn't cause bronchospasm. It's a very good drug for induction, and so therefore use ketamine. For the doses, I think somebody from the intensive care intensivist can type in the chat box the dose and details of ketamine for the viewers.
Maximum duration of Maxel.
Maximum?
Duration of magnesium sulfate.
Okay, it's around, you can give it as a small infusion over 30-40 minutes, watch for hypertension, and that's enough. And you can repeat it a little later, maybe 6 or 12 hours later, and then see. But what happens is, majority of the times if you give steroids early, you don't have to use them. Really, I don't recollect having used Maxel for past really good number of days. You forget the COVID days. I'm minusing the COVID days and telling you, nowadays nobody's coming. So therefore, prior to that, no, very less. If you do good job in the first 2-3 steps, the 4th, 5th steps won't be a problem.
Fix the drug
No? What is the question, Nimi?
The question is fixed drug rescues role.
Fixed drug rescue is you should know both the drugs and you should know both the drugs in combination. I would say okay, ipratropium with salbutamol is fine because there is some what should I say, fine, but you may not use ipratropium as many times as you use salbutamol. So therefore I would say, like for example, you may give ipratropium rescue first and then only salbutamol, then again ipratropium plus salbutamol. You understand my point? Suppose salbutamol may be 2 hourly and ipratropium may be 6th hourly. So adjust accordingly. You may have to choose the rescue. This is just a what should I say, tip for you.
What is the benefit of using valve inlet spacer?
Okay, valve is something which is it's a tricky question. In a spacer, if you have a valve, the air that is coming out will not go back to the spacer. That's what is the function of the valve. Let me tell you, that's important. Okay, if you use a spacer with a valve, the exhaled air doesn't go back to spacer. Why it should not go back? It is because, let's say a spacer contains 250 ml of the aerosol. Spacer volume is 250 ml and child's tidal volume is, tidal breath is 50 ml. Okay, I'm giving a 7 kg example. Now child should take 5 breaths to empty 250 ml logically. Do you agree? 250 ml is there, 50 ml once, 50 ml out, 50 ml once, 50 ml out. Okay. Now if you breathe into the spacer, the question is little difficult for me to calculate how much gets mixed, backflow. You understand my point? So how many breaths? So you may have to give additional 5 or 6 breaths. But the compliance is very good in first 4 or 5 breaths. You tell a child to do 1, 2, 3, 4, count up to 10. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 apart. When they go to 7, 8, 9, the child is not that cooperative as much as it is in the first 2, 3. Please understand. So therefore, very good breath is the first breath in a spacer. The second is inferior to the first. Third is much more inferior. 5 to 10 is just optional. You understand my point? So therefore, use an appropriate size spacer and valve. But the problem is, if the child is below 2 years of age, I'm just giving an empirical age. Don't fix me on the evidence-based medicine. Generally, in infants and young ones, they will not be able to open the valve by their inspiration. The valve has to open. They can't open. So to open a valve, you have to make the child lie down and give the spacer like this. Then the valve opens. But the problem is you should not give inhalation in lying down position. And therefore, you must use an unvalved spacer in very young and a valved one in the older one. Now the issue is that anyway the young ones are handicapped either because of instruments, either because of devices, or because of airway characteristics, or because of crying, or because the mother doesn't want to give too young an inhalation therapy. Somehow they are handicapped. Did you understand? But older ones, they excellently take. I will give an example. Nebulizer, you say for young ones, no? You give the nebulizer to an adult, he will inhale superbly. He will not even allow the mist to come out of that mask. Did you understand the point? So therefore, adults and older ones are excellent inhalers as a subject. So the point which you are asking is, the valve is preferable, but count on the age.
Type 2 brittle asthmatics, how to cater?
There is nothing like type 1 and type 2. Please understand. This is only a classification which I pushed into your brain only to recognize the severe ones who may be therapy resistant, who may be just 1 to 2% of them. But if they are frequently visiting your ICU, please remember, beware. You must not be searching for Maxelf. You must not be searching for an intensivist. So those, in that context, I told the recognition of the type 2 is important. Otherwise, there is no categorization as such.
Why don't
See, there is something called, if you require an ipratropium for more than 2 days, that means the child is very sick. And whether it really works. By that time, by 2 days, the child should be on downward trend, it should be on the way of, take off ipratropium, go on salbutamol. There is something like tachyphylaxis that happens. You use a drug more and more, even salbutamol, when you use more and more, and ipratropium more and more, lesser and lesser, it will work little later. Saturation. It's all about saturation.
Any role for dexamethasone in acute flare-up?
Excellent role. In fact, the cheapest and the best drug which has been misused in 90s is the one which is very good, should be used in 20s now.
And the next question is the role of adrenaline.
Adrenaline is a life-saving drug. Only disadvantage of adrenaline, it is a non-selective beta agonist. That means it has both alpha and beta action. But remember, in some of them, even alpha action has some advantage. You understand? Proximal, airways, etc. In resource poor setting, you can use adrenaline injection and send them off. But no nebulized adrenaline. No, nebulized adrenaline is only for bronchiolitis, not for asthma. Please remember this. This is a small message. When you have a very good selective beta 2 agonist, why to go for non-selective? That makes rational. When you have a refined beta stimulant, why you want beta 1 plus beta 2? It makes no sense, isn't it?
Is plain formoterol MDI available?
Plain formoterol is not available. At least to me, if somebody is there, please post them. I see, at least whatever that I know, I will ask the Cipla representative next and answer to you in WhatsApp also. Is it available? Now it's a question that is making me, should it be made available? It should not be made available. Rather, I would wish that it is not available, because people start using. And LABA alone using is associated with higher deaths from asthma.
What diluent should be used with magnesium sulfate?
Saline.
Yeah, I think. Okay, we have 2-3 more questions. Is hydrocortisone preferred over Dexa?
No. If you want to spend more money, you can.
Yeah, and okay. Is there any role for adrenaline nebulization in intubated patients?
No idea. Sorry ma, somebody is intubated and they want to give adrenaline. Are you asking for CPR? Yes, there is a role. Because we also give, endotracheal adrenaline. Are they talking of that or nebulizing adrenaline? Nebulization, no, you can give beta 2.
Salbutamol efficacy in infants.
See, remember, where the salbutamol works, it works on beta 2 receptors. In the airways, where are the beta 2 receptors are maximum situated? Beta 2 receptors are maximum in smooth muscles. And where is the smooth muscle? It is not there in the nose, it's not there in the throat, it's not there in the early rings of trachea, bronchi. Did you understand? And as the bronchi starts dividing, you start getting more and more smooth. Even in the bronchi it's there. But I'm telling, the intensity starts going high and high as the airways become medium and small. And when the airways become smallest, which is devoid of smooth muscles, bronchioles, beta 2 is very less. That is why in bronchiolitis, salbutamol nebulization doesn't work, because bronchiolitis is not a disease where smooth muscles exist. Bronchiolitis is a disease which starts after the smooth muscle ceases to be the part of anatomy. And that's why salbutamol doesn't help in pneumonia, because it is a parenchymal disease where beta 2 receptors are less. But does it mean that beta 2 receptors are not there? They are there. They may not produce a clinical bronchodilation, clinically effective bronchodilation. The receptor, for the sake of, if you want to use a tracer study, you can have. But will it produce a clinical benefit? Answer is no. Number one. Number two, in infants, younger they are, lesser is the development of smooth muscles. So therefore, infant airways are more collapsible and openable than dilatable. I think that answers. They're more like, touch me not type of airways than ring me not airways. More of them they flap.
So next question is, does LABA have steroid sparing effect?
LABA has steroid sparing effect. That's why nowadays LABA is part of long-term management of asthma. You must give symptom relief, and LABA upregulates steroid receptors. Steroids upregulate LABA receptors, both. So therefore it works. It is an excellent synergetic drug with steroid.
Difference between Respule and respiratory solution.
Respule is a ready-made solution, small one, and respiratory solution is a larger quantity. But the respiratory solution contains higher drug. It contains 5 milligram per ml of solution. Respule contains 2.5 per 2.5 ml, 1 mg per ml. So therefore respiratory solution is a thinner solution, dilute solution compared to respiratory solution. If you want to be cost effective, you can use respiratory solution.
Hydrocortisone has 1 hour of onset and Dexa at least 6 hours. Why not coma in the emergency?
Onset of action, okay, I technically agree on that point, because I would definitely agree with him, but the point is that it's not onset alone, it is that it covers for the entire episode as such. And for the onset, any steroid would take 4 to 6 hours. Steroid themselves take 4 to 6 hours after giving. See, even if hydrocortisone acts in 1 hour, the steroid effect doesn't happen within 1 hour in the airways. Steroids, for the anti-inflammatory effect to be realized, it takes 4 to 6 hours. So let's say steroid acts within 1 second, then also it takes 4 to 6 hours for the child to get relieved. So that's the point. See, basically what I meant was steroid is not an emergency drug. Emergency drug is salbutamol. When steroid is going to take off from emergency drug, it's a take-off drug. So therefore, debating the pharmacokinetics only mean question of mathematics. 1 hour versus 2 hours versus 4 hours. People take 2 hours to travel from one place to another place to reach to the hospital. So therefore, all these things is a question of permutation and combination, and just a math. It's just a number game. Rather than, clinically fair enough. If somebody has Dexa, let them give. Suppose you want to give hydrocortisone, I don't say no. Give na. It's okay. You have to start an IV line.
And injection Derifilin in pediatrics perspective.
Out.
Okay, this one is a second question. Like they had a question. Does LABA have steroid sparing effect?
Okay, why not LABA alone? If you use LABA alone in asthmatic airways, it is going to saturate beta 2 receptors, and there is a bronchodilation, right? You understand? You are using LABA, bronchodilation. So there is edema that happens because of chronic inflammation. When he becomes sick and in a flare up, look at his airways now. It is dilated to the saturation point. Now it is edemated to critical zone. What you want to do? You have to do emergency dilatation, which is not possible. You understand the point? Therefore, increased use of LABA is associated with increased deaths from asthma. That is because they will give false sense of security in the beginning and come late. One. Second, they saturate. Third is they cover up for edema in the beginning or inflammation thickening in the beginning, and when they give up, it is too late.
So these intramuscular Dexa helpful in
Okay, if the way you give intramuscular injection is not causing bronchospasm, it's okay. You can give in any route, that doesn't matter, but oral is there now. Oral you can give easily. You can give IV also, no problem.
I think we have covered all questions.
If
Thank you, sir. Any more questions from the audience? Anybody wants to ask?
anybody wants to ask or make any comment, please you can, because if there is something for me to learn also, it will be excellent.
Yeah, Suman sir ഉണ്ടാവും. I think Suman sir ഉണ്ടാവും ഇവിടെ. I don't കരുതുന്നു. Is any need to talk? Sir, Dr. Suman sir. ഉണ്ടോ?
Dr. Srinivasan sir, my teacher,
Any
sir,
comments? Yeah, sir. Any comments? Yeah.
comment sir, unmute sir.
Well, unmute yourselves, please.
Hello.
Sir,
Yeah.
So we have come a long way. No, those days, we can definition the Nelson was textbook of Nelson 9th edition.
correct
As
sir.
we study, you give 3 doses of adrenaline before you declare and make them get admitted in the hospital. So we have come such a long way, and of course, so your talk as usual is humorous as well as, of course, it was very informative. Only thing I have posted, albuterol is the same as salbutamol. Only thing it is called as albuterol
Sir,
in
sir.
America, USA.
Sir,
And just like acetamol,
same sir. Albuterol is the albuterol is the Saba. That's all. Salbutamol only.
Yeah, it's albuterol because you mentioned, no? Yeah, it's not available in India because in European countries and here.
Sir, what I meant was albuterol infusion. I meant infusion, not oral or inhaler. Infusion, you don't have injections.
I think, I think we have come to the end of the session. I think, thank you very much, sir. Suman sir, it was a wonderful talk, and you have brought up a lot of tips, a lot of new points for pediatricians to use them in their office practice. So many doubts have been cleared, and probably some misconceptions have been also been cleared. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for inviting us, for accepting the invitation and coming to webinar. As one of Madhigarala, we are very happy you are come to talk to us, and we will see you in the future. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, good night.
Yeah.
Actually, lot more people wanted to attend this.
Yeah, they couldn't, no? Yeah, they wanted YouTube link. They were also posting me.
So that we can share it with everyone.
You share the YouTube recordings with me. Many will now start sending me WhatsApp messages, so I will be able to share them the link. Huh?
Get flashing for Subramania.
No sir, I will get the message. No sir, I have to reply.
I think we should talk to Dr. Johnny. Yeah.
Johnny?
Okay. Next time we will do it. Yeah.
Speakers like Supra sir.
Get flashing.
Yeah, there will be a lot of attendance. Doctors have to attend his talk. Yeah, that always happens.
Yeah, like I got a lot of messages, like a lot.
Yeah, right. I think when
Even
Subran sir
our
comes in.
No, Nimi, it is very simple. You do one more. Doesn't matter. You don't hesitate. No. See, I am telling you, I should not be telling like this, but I don't mind. Our sir will be daily chatting with me and ask me, is there any lecture today? We will also come and join. So it's okay. This is the time of crisis. Everybody is at home. Instead of doing something else and getting into negativity, it's a good learning time. In fact, it's fine. Fair enough. So, sir, I am promising that from my end there won't be no. You take it as yes. Only question of you just decide the date, and any topic in respiratory you just say yes. Will always be there. Why not? Isn't it? Fine, fair enough.
Yeah, that's right. It was I who asked Dr. Shimmy to contact you, sir.
Okay.
I don't know whether you are busy or not.
So Nimi, you are going to tell me when is the next talk. That's all. Okay, done.
Yeah.
So fine,
Sure,
fair
sir,
enough.
sure,
No,
sir.
done.
That time
Okay.
we'll go for bigger
So
one.
fine, no
Yeah,
problem.
thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Good
much
night,
for
sir.
the time, sir. Good
Thank
night.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
very
thank
much.
you.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Thank you.
Good Johnny.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Night.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Okay.
Nimi, thanks, ma. Tell,
you so
convey
much.
my regards to all the
Sorry for
organizers.
being-
Why you were tensed about that connectivity, no, in the beginning?
Yeah, because it was raining heavily here. I had actually joined at 7:50 because Shimi sir had told me that you will come
Okay,
at
okay.
7:50. But then, it actually
Don't worry.
something happened to the network.
It's
So
okay.
sorry, sir.
It's
Thank
okay.
you so much for recurring, sir.
Yeah. I can see Kasliwal sir. Namaste. Okay, ma. Bye. Bye. Bye.